You're now rocking with Jiggy Jones. We have the Mark Ecko in the building. Mark, how are you?
I'm good. What is happening?
Everything's well. Everything's well. Now, you are celebrating the 30th year of of your brand full of notoriety. What does this year mean? How are you commemorating this time period? And what is this new collection inspired to do?
Um, I think I'm more celebrating 1993 than I am 2023. So when the folks that operate the business reached out to do an anniversary thing, they initially started we chatted about something on the 25th year anniversary, and I just was just juggling too much. And then when they reminded me that, hey, next year is going to be 30, it felt just like the right time. I really just wanted to do something that felt like a meditation on the year I started. I've been out of the business, the fashion business now for operationally for it's been a good long period. So I would say like 2010 or something, so it was just kind of a interesting professional challenge to sort of dust myself off, and even if it just was like a little vocation at night, with my other with life and work, to sort of dabble again in design just for fun. It was really to just, it's like a love letter, I say, to 1993. That was my intention. Um, it's been a crazy life experience. It's shaped my whole life. And I think it's it's something I'm very grateful for. So I wanted to just, a little bit of that, and then a little bit of like, you get to a certain age and you start to permission nostalgia. I used to be the dude that was all about unplugging nostalgia. And now, you get to a certain age, you're like, oh, you know what? It's actually a good thing to reflect on all that work, and then you get to, I got to meet people who were really avid collectors of the brand that I hadn't been in orbit with. And that just kind of gave me a different perspective, hearing people obsessing over the history of the brand, early catalogs, line sheets, rare samples that they discovered. And I learned about this whole sort of subculture of vintage heads, and I kind of came to that through my son. My son is 19, and he hit me to that this was happening.
Mm.
And over the last 3 or 4 years, like I went to a vintage expo with him, um, and I got to see it, and I'm like, wow, this is a real thing. This is fascinating.
Yep, yep. Yeah, and will that the Deer 93 collection include any of those kind of vintage pieces, or at least
It didn't out of the gate. We did this event that where a couple archivists that we met, that just honestly through IG DMs and just people adding me over the years, I just finally started reaching out, and then they were blowing my mind to their collection. Some of these guys have hundreds of pieces. And they talk about like Echo with an H. There was the ECHO period. It was pre-Rhino, and then there was first Rhino, and then like they break it down like the way that my friends used to be like low heads, like polo heads. And I never saw the work I did in that way until I got to see it through the eyes of these folks. So I think in the future they brought pieces that I hadn't seen in 20 years, 25 years. Okay. So they were like a figment of my imagination, or like I had a really dusty photo, like a blurry ass photo of them.
yeah.
So that kind of energized us to maybe say, hey, there might be some sort of reissue sort of re-release play of just of pieces of grails.
Gotcha.
So, but that's to come. Right now, the assortment is really narrow. I
Hmm.
just focused on, you know, like a boxed, like a gift box thing, and only 93 pieces of each.
Yeah.
And it was mostly about friends and family for me.
Gotcha, gotcha. Now, since we're on the topic of just nostalgia, I definitely want you to take me back to your time at Rutgers, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, you're going to pharmacy school, correct? School
Yeah,
of
that's
Pharmacy.
right.
And during that time, you're encouraged by the dean to go pursue, your passion. And
Yeah.
also, I'm a Jersey born and raised, Newark, New
Oh,
Jersey.
okay.
Yeah,
Okay, bet.
but I opted not to go to Rutgers. I went to William Patterson, Willie P. in Wayne.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, take me through that conversation that you have
Yeah.
with Dean, Professor Collins.
Lazy, yeah. Dean
Yeah.
John Lazy. They've since he's well retired now, and they named a building after him. And I can I've stayed in touch with him actually at when they opened the building about just at the end of like the first year of COVID. They opened it, and I went to that ceremony. It was great to see him. I mean, I think that was probably one of the most important, if you were to remake the movie,
Hmm.
that's like the Obi-Wan moment, like where you're permissioned to go,
Yep.
you have the skill, like seek the Force, Luke. It was like that vibe.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
yeah.
remember it vividly because I just barely got through a really hard inorganic chemistry class, which was a
Mhm.
third year of pharmacy school. And I was a really average to below average student. I'm sure I have ADHD or ADD for sure. It just was never diagnosed. Um,
A
but
lot of creatives do.
yeah, so I think I just had made it through by the skin of my teeth. They allowed me to retake the final exam, and then it was that summer, the ending of that semester, where the pieces started to fall into line out in the world. Right, my friend, my dear friend, who I'm still close with to this day, from Lakewood, New Jersey, a guy I grew up with named Khalid Brock, got signed to Biv 10 Records.
Okay.
And that was when Biv 10 was like a part of Motown Records.
So it's like
He was riding that whole BBD wave,
yeah.
right? And all that East Coast family wave.
Hmm.
So I was airbrushing in the circuit, just making stuff for friends. So, and for clients. So here I was, this sort of Batman and Bruce Wayne thing, like pharmacy school student by day, airbrush artist, wannabe graffiti artist by night kind of thing.
Hmm.
And it was that duality, and to the credit of the dean, um, he gave me one of those moments where he was like, you don't want to shoulda, coulda, woulda later on in life. I could have studied pharmacy school. I could have studied law school, he told me. And I didn't pursue it. And then I got to my 40s and I had like pangs of regret that maybe what would my career have been. But like I'm happy where I'm at as the dean here, but you don't want to be in that place where you ruminate on that. He shared in that sort of open way.
Hmm.
Um, I never had an educator do that like that and give me that kind of perspective, like those decisions that you take in that moment could shape everything about your life. So I
Exactly.
feel like he gave me the nudge and the permission, because then he allowed me to stay enrolled in the school by allowing me to take one class, and he created a a medical illustration class for me because he knew I was an artist, and he had me go into one of the labs where they were testing like an AIDS medication. There was a guy that was had a research grant, and he had this one lab, and they were doing like the bioabsorption. I remember it vividly because I drew it. Like it's funny how like I would learn things through my hand that way. Like I could to this day break down what that was all about, and I ended up coming full circle, giving that illustration to Dean Khaleesi when I saw him a couple years ago. I found my black book, cut it out, got it properly framed, frame that gave it to him.
I
Yeah,
love that. I'm certainly sure he appreciated that just as a
he
10.
did. Yeah, yeah,
Because like you said, that moment kind of shaped, and I think just the relatability aspect, right? He saw something in you, and he took from his own, kind of anecdotal experience, like, hey, don't
right,
don't be like me, basically.
right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, it was nuanced. He probably also knew. Like I look back at it, like he knew I wasn't a great student, so he was kind of like, you might not make it."
in
There
this
might
in,
have been a
in this
little
realm.
bit of that too,
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly. But also, obviously the brand Echo was, like you said, kind of started with just exercising your creativity, airbrushing, but
yeah,
obviously the brand grew to
yeah,
a household name
yeah,
in many celebrity lives, influencer lives at
sure,
that
yeah,
time. Just talk about your relationship with like Spike Lee and Chuck D in those
yeah.
early days, and how early was that in the
Well, I
brand?
mean, I was like willing relationships. Do you know what I mean? Like I was like, that's why I never not take when I meet someone and like handing out a CD.
Hmm.
You know what I mean, or a mixtape, or they like, can I give you a T-shirt? I
Hmm.
never not take it because I was that person. Do you know what I mean? And so I just went on this sort of I was just operating from the same mode that everyone within hip hop and skate were doing at the time, which was sort of just a very kind of guerrilla style of marketing. And my Friday nights were consumed and Saturday nights in high school and college listening to, if it was like Red Alert, and you could hear all the shout outs, and he would get faxes. And then I would watch Ralph McDaniel's Video Music Box, and I'd see people just being kind of promotional. And
Hmm.
I just was like, I just was parroting what I mean, what I saw. I'm like, well, the best marketing is my product. You are what you make, you
But,
know. Um, you are what you make and how you make people and how what you make makes people feel,
yep.
So I couldn't articulate it at that time in that
Mhm.
exact way, but it was kind of intuitive. So I just was willing things. And I remember Spike came to Rutgers and the Malcolm X movie was about to ship, and he just kind of famously got his last bits of funding because he had to go back to the well to get friends and family to fund because he was over budget. Um, and he wasn't going to cut the film. Uh, and he was basically doing like a marketing campaign at colleges. And I remember kind of stalking literally. It was kind of like there is a fine line, right? Like you don't want to stalk, but
Persistent sometimes,
but
but
it
you're
was
right.
it was it was persistence. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It was an enthusiastic, maybe naive persistence, and managed to get the address to his DeKalb Avenue shop at the time. Then I airbrushed the sweatshirt, sent it to him, and then fast forward years later, he's making Bamboozled, and he was in my showroom. He just calls up one day, which is Spike is like the most. I don't know anyone who reps harder for New York. Like
Hmm.
I'm just trying to like.
He's
Uh,
still a Knicks fan after all these years.
I'm saying like, and does anyone rep harder for Brooklyn? I don't know. Like I'm not trying to make a competition out of it, but I just saw his one man show in Brooklyn. He's got right now at the Brooklyn Museum. I don't know if you've seen it. It's
Yeah, I
it's
haven't. I just saw the Jay-Z one. I have to go back there next week and see
Yeah,
the
you
Spike.
got to go check it out. So, but long story short, it was just sort of serendipity. I was willing it, and then finally he reached out to me. His stylist was like styling the film, and he had Spike DDB, which is his agency at the time, and I had aspirations to do media with Complex, at the time. Like that was just a fragment of an idea. And I would share this backstory, and he's like, I kind of remember, like, yeah, kind of like,
Hmm.
but he got so many things
Yep.
painted and sent to him in his life, right? So, but I think I might have made that little bit of that connection. And then he ended up it was my second New York City runway show he produced. And
Mm-hmm.
I shot like a short film for it. And then um we just became associates. And then eventually I went on to do Complex, and he came on as like as an advisor.
Yep.
And to this day, I really look up to him he's a good friend.
Certainly, man. Spike, like you said, a legend.
We
Outside
walk
of,
around like with a stat. It's like when I'm with
yeah,
Spike, like
that's New York's, like, some people, I know New York has the notable Statue of Liberty, but no, Spike Lee is
one
really,
of the great life experiences is going to a Knicks game with Spike Lee, walking in through the side door, the back door. Spike, 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 Mr. Lee, Spike, Spike. Hey, 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 what's up? Just giving everybody dap. He's like the mayor,
that's true.
more than
That's
the mayor, for
Yeah,
real.
no one reps it harder, and no one has just have that creative output and given, just the
Yeah.
opportunities to match it.
And
Um,
he's been very generous. If you look at his career, over his career, he makes a point of putting people on.
yep, yep.
So he like that is his creative approach,
Hmm.
and in a way that's like not extractive. Some
Exactly.
people put people on, but then they take.
Yep, yep.
He
That's true.
gives. So I love him.
No, certainly, and I think that just derives from a mentality of being a serviceman. Just
Yeah,
as
yeah,
kind of walking your purpose and your passion. That, like, you're doing things to, like you said, kind of communicate or evoke that emotion, how people
yeah,
feel, how the way they communicate with the product.
yeah,
But at the same time, you want to do it. You're doing it to kind of leave the environment better than where you found it.
yes.
So yeah, so
Mhm.
that's always that's kind of what I take from that. Now, and speaking of that aspect of lifting as we climb, the cliche always goes, success is always tied to the people who you surround yourself with. Who are
Mhm.
some key figures just in those infancy stages of Ecko, in or
So many. My gosh.
infancy stages of a complex as well?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. You're only as tall as the shoulders that, prop you up.
Mhm.
For me, there's no doubt that my twin sister Marcy was like a really extremely important unfair advantage. And it becomes more clear as you get older. I now have three beautiful young kids that are college age, and the unfair advantage of being a twin is like, wow, it's deep, because there was this sort of, she's 5 minutes older than me, so I constantly had like this consigliere, it was like a consigliere style trust, and it was this sort of radically practical voice that could just sort of cut through my ego and like creative pride, so that if I was kind of, in creator mode and you're just kind of dizzy
To get
in
you
the
back.
mode of like of seduced in your own idea, drinking your own Kool-Aid, she could kind of break you down to like 5 years old, and be like, no,
That.
no, fatty. This is what I told you, like on some like
This is what
really,
it takes. This is what you have to do.
this is what you have to do.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
that it goes without saying. And then there are just so many people. There, my partner Seth was important. Coltrane Curtis, who was one of my, he was like an intern and then kind of worked his way up to run marketing. Um, MC Search had a crazy history with him. He was a very generous collaborator. Great photographers that worked for me: Sandra Mihalenko, Tierick Monroe, that just helped me portray the image. I think my whole creative team, we really were, it was like a university. It was special. Like, there's definitely a movie to be made, like for sure. Cause it was like a lot of really dope designers came through the ranks and
Yeah.
went on to build their own things and work for Nike and go to Louis Vuitton, go to like, so it was kind of, it is a really, I could just, and that's why I did this Dear 1993 thing, because I literally put them all on my friends and family list. I just want to thank all these people. I miss them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They
No,
were
no.
like really important to me.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think how just often do you either speak to just anyone from that kind of like original team, or I
Not
know.
enough, not enough to realize that, you know what, it's time to do something, even if it's just for the merits of like reconnecting on a sort of, frequency and sort of life level,
Yep.
just a humanity level. Um, and it was dope. And then reaching out to Buckshot and Druha and Paz and, Prince Paul and, so many people just, were Talib Kweli, you know, um, were supportive. And yeah, we had business relationships as well, but it was just different. It was like we were really earnestly building infrastructure, you know.
Now, I was reading an article, and you mentioned this term
What
before. It
was
was
the what was the context? I'm
Oh,
wondering.
it was for the home, uh the property that was once owned by the Astor family.
Oh, right, 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 right,
By the
right.
way, were you able to sell that home yet?
No,
Okay.
still.
Okay. Okay.
So that's not an easy one to sell, but yeah. But
But but but just in that, just in design, kind of, that minimalist approach, we've seen it kind of in clothing. I would say probably like the last decade, but I would say back then, like just from my eye, I despise like the big logo
mm,
T-shirts, like
right.
with the brand in the front. Like I hate those personally, but just in that aspect, were you always kind of taking the approach of design, a minimalist approach to design, or is that something that kind of developed later
That
on?
developed with age, and then you realize that, you know what, like, one, you could take the boy out of Jersey, but you can't take the Jersey out of the boy. I am a maximalist. Sorry.
There you go.
Like, that was probably, wherever that quote came from, was probably some sort of like, I was in this mode of, I would say, my 30s, trying to stretch my aesthetic or discover a new aesthetic. And I was in a building mode. My family was building. I was building houses. I was building retail. I was starting to appreciate the philosophy of design thinking and architecture, and I am definitely a student to that, having experienced it. But I would say, when you really boil down who and what I am, like, I'm probably much more of a maximalist than a minimalist. I struggle with the edit. You know what I mean? I need help with the edit. I've gotten better at it, you know. Uh, and then I've also come to embrace the aesthetic of the Ecko brand, which was about big logos, and it was much more about wasn't so much like designing as much as it was detailing.
Yeah.
You know, I think, am I a designer? I think I'm a detailer, because like
Mm,
I think
mm,
like,
Turn right there.
like, I'm like, oh, I thought about it the other night. Someone reached out to me, sent an old picture of like a jacket I hadn't seen forever. And doing this exercise, and went through some runway show stuff. And then in 2003, I had uh yeah, it was 2003. I had my last Echo Unlimited runway show. That was 20 years ago. It was called Dreamnasium. And we showed this at the event that we did. I found footage, and with the music and everything. Don Kirk, rest in peace, did the music production. Rich Medina did the music production. I grew up with Rich in Lakewood High School.
Nice.
Um, and It was maximalist. It was trying, like, yes, I was doing blazers, and yes, I was doing like, really, I don't know, I was stretching myself
Mhm.
aesthetically, but even in my pursuit of minimalism, I don't know that I ever shook the maximalism.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's you to the core. Like you said, you can't take the boy out of Jersey, but you can't take the Jersey out the boy. So
Right.
uh
So it's just like who I am. Like, I think it's a little Virgo, a little OCD,
yeah.
Like I love details. I obsess on the, maybe to a fault. It's a gift and a curse, but like on a pound for pound, I feel like I could go up against anyone creatively on details. So, you
Yep,
know,
there you go. There you go. Sometimes it's the journey to as long as you get to the destination. Uh,
right. Yeah,
journey is not linear.
right. Not at all.
Yeah. So you were the youngest. Just speak about board positions, and how effective that has been, either just your pursuit to kind of change the landscape, or just your objective in general. So you were the youngest board member of the Council of Fashion Designers of America.
Mhm.
Just speak about that position, and what have you seen that you have either enjoyed or things that you kind of want to change. But how did it feel to just how did it feel to kind of be the youngest to assume that position?
In the immediate moment, I remember being a little bit like shocked and like kind of, feeling like I was invited to the club. As a kid who is my whole life felt a little bit like an outsider, an underdog. It felt like validation. And then when I got there, I think my expectations were naive. Um, because I'm like, all right, well, I kind of came in the way that I did, hawking, sending people swag bombs, like just like, being unafraid to suggest, solicit, tweak, tune.
I call that
And
hospitality.
yeah, yeah. So uh I think it was a great experience. I learned a lot about the groupthink that happens inside of a lot of industries.
Mhm.
I think fashion, fine art, really guilty of it, has gotten better over the last 20 years, but I think, I don't know that I'm just like I was one grain of salt in it, but like I was there to add a little, but hopefully create a lot. And I was an advocate for sport and street, and I try to break down the myth that industrial design is not fashion design. Like Mark Jacobs, who I admire, and I think is a very important designer historically. And I think he did a lot of things to bring diversity of ideas to the industry generally, and diversity. But when Mark would do let's say a ripoff of like a Tinker Hatfield shoe,
Mhm.
right? Like it would be named as fashion if it had an LV on it. But the same
Yeah.
shoe by Nike was like looked down, people look down their nose. Or then when someone like a Supreme, and now this is when Supreme hadn't become, $1 billion Carlisle Group Supreme.
Yep.
No shade, there's no shade. But I think I've advocated for, the importance of how young people interpret fashion, and that aesthetic is valid, and that the constraints of what beauty or luxury are, I felt like a sense of needing to stir that up, you
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
So I remember right before the markets crashed, I had a meeting with the I wrote about this in my book, so I won't like totally relitigate it, but uh I had a meeting with I hosted the CFDA meeting in my offices. And I remember challenging people we need to add a category to the CFDA awards. We need to invite this cohort of my peers. It's like, it's not about me. I'm not saying about me. I'm saying this next generation. It's like we need, like I came to fashion because I thought it was about expression and there's no rules. And unfortunately, I see there's a lot of rules and there's a lot of sort of groupthink. And, and I was probably a little bit, I probably didn't say it as nice, and I think I was a little adversarial.
The
Uh,
pageants.
I would have had better bedside manner if I could replay it today. I might have been more persuasive, but I was younger, and they looked at me sideways. And I remember, rest in peace, Oscar De La Renta was there, and he was like spicy, He's like, I love what you're saying, Mark. This is the most refreshing thing. Like you affirmed me. So I felt like validated. There were a couple people like, yeah, you know, and then there were others who just like, no, right? So that's when I said, fuck this. I'm not going to these meetings anymore. And but you know, it sounds a little bit bitter. Okay. I don't mean to sound bitter. I admire what Stephen Kolb has done there.
Mm.
Um, they have embraced, you know, for the fast forward years later, you know, you have Virgil, you know, finally getting his props, and the industry did, I think, go on to embrace my thesis.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of like inside out, because now like Pharrell is the head of Louis Vuitton. It's like, wow, look how far we came, you know.
Honestly. And I feel like you were part of that, ignited to that flame, right? Even and
We're
you
part of the story.
yeah,
I
yeah.
used to
And
tell Virgil, me and Virgil, you know, I had the blessing of when he was about to do his one-man show in Chicago at the MCA. Um, we were working together on Complex Con, and I had the privilege of being there to introduce him and kind of be a part of the alchemy that brought him together with Takashi Murakami. And they went on to do something together at Complex Con, and then Michael Darling, who was the curator in Chicago who gave Virgil that one man show shot like a year before, like a year and a half, maybe even 2 years notionally before the LV window. Like Virgil was really like he got that look. And I remember going to Chicago to do a panel with Virgil, like as part of the programming on the way to his one man show, and we talked about how we just exist to complete each other's story. You know what I
Yo,
mean? It's
there we
like you
go.
have to zoom out, you know, and if you live life all the way zoomed in, and this in this sort of selfish insular way where you just kind of consuming and digesting and processing life within whatever the perimeter is, 1 block, 1 mile, 5 square miles, whatever it is, and you just think your universe is that, it's an unfortunate way to live,
Yeah,
right? When you
this hurts.
realize that you can live and be catalytic, and that your energy can contribute to another person's energy, and it just could be this kind of catalytic thing, and
Mm.
you zoom out, and like that's a way to live where that I think is post ego. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you have to be beyond your ego. You have to say, all right, well, what does my action do to help this person or that, or to create an energy?
Hmm.
Sometimes it's not even by, I can't name who I'm helping. It's not that transactional,
Yep,
but
yep,
it's just a sort of like energetic thing, you
exactly.
know? And you know, you know, sometimes you end up getting the short end of the stick, you know, and that's okay.
Hmm.
Sometimes you get karmic rewards that like you could never have imagined. So
Exactly.
I think you know, we would have had this discussion with friends over the years, because you know, coming up, you're competitive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And there's a lot of not so nice moments, which we will
yeah.
not discuss,
I think
right?
because you're going into like the realm of unknown, right? So you
Right.
just the goal is just consistency at a maximum effort and to just get better, and then you
Yeah.
kind of see what that results brings, and then you kind of get inspired by peers, mentors, those who have done it at a high level, and you're like, okay, I want that to be the goal. But then, like you said, that revelation and that those epiphanies start happening where it turns to service.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of people are tied to your passion and your purpose,
Yeah.
even if you haven't met them yet. But
Right.
like I said, even you in that board meeting is like that was a lot of folks, but you were kind of like the poster child because you were in the position. And even though like you didn't sound bitter to me, you just sounded, it's like, all right, okay, I'm here, but they're not kind of encouraging the
I
voice.
kind of knew they weren't, and I
Yeah,
had a chip on my shoulder. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So like I could have probably been more like the 51-year-old version of me would say I could have probably been more optimistic and Jedi and kind of Tai Chi my way in a little bit better. But I was almost by design because I knew that they weren't ready for it. So I was like, fuck it. I'm just gonna make them feel
Yeah.
how old they
Disruptive.
are. I'm gonna make them feel old and make them really have to ponder this. And I was hopeful. I was thinking, well, you know what? That had worked for me, this brute force style of operating. And that is a part of, I've some friends that are contemporaries in the field that tease me. They're like, you've gotten too nice. You used to be, so much more brash. And, like they would tease me, like, what you used to be. And I'm like, no, it just, but every 7 years, your body changes, every cell. Like, I
Yeah,
can't,
you
that's not who
grew.
I am.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm not going to be performative and replay that version of me, like that. Don't get it twisted. Like, I'm still, like, I'm still competitive when I'm certain about something. I could become like obsessed over it.
Yeah.
And I could be like I'd say like a tornado or something. But when I'm committed to something, but you don't have to be an asshole.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's all. So
Exactly. No, no, Mark, I appreciate that, man. And last question before we get up out of here. What excites you? Well, a couple questions. First one, what excites you about creation, or what even inspires you like today from just from like a subjective perspective? If you see something out there, or you see someone just creating something or trying to communicate their product to a mass audience, do you have any like anecdotal moments that you've seen recently?
Oh, for sure. I am one of my passions and is technology. And I have my whole career used different modes of technology to build better productivity for my creation. Right. So I've always, again, it's the Virgo in me. When I was able to get that first taste of Photoshop, I was very early in that, and like that gave me a massive competitive advantage, right? You go back to, when I started in 93, in 94, there was a guy who hosted me, who taught me, basically how to, master Photoshop and layers and channels. And why that was important is because for screen printing, the cost of doing the color separation was a cost that you'd have to, pay the screen printer or some separate production artist to make your separations.
Wow.
And when I was doing complicated photoreal images, right? There's one process which it's CMYK, but you can only print on white, okay? Because the inks are transparent. But I wanted to print on black. So you want to print with plastisol ink. Now you have to manipulate the color channels. So this guy taught me that, and I leaned into that. I've always been a nerd for design productivity tools. So to come full circle to your question, I'm a big advocate for uh, digital literacy. I think this moment, we're in an Overton window right now with AI. I know there are a lot of people that are afraid of it, and there's merit in some of these fears, and but not unlike there was merit in the fears of a piston engine, what it would do to for safety. Not like unlike there was fears around airplanes, not unlike there was fears around the printing press, right? And what happens if less educated get access to this information? There's always fears of this stuff, right? But I am a big I'm deep, 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 deep down the rabbit hole of what's going on in generative AI, especially within IP and art. And I'm a fan. There's an artist named Holly Herndon. It comes from a completely different genre, but I'd say she's like one of the first truly digital native artists that I've really come to appreciate. She's kind of bugged out. You should look her up.
How you spell her last name?
It's Herndon, Holly Herndon, but she's been like a big advocate for artists owning their digital data, like owning their likeness, their voice, their style, and this sort of new mental model around what copyright is, right? Because AI will break that, right? Like there's in music, there's mechanical rights to music because there's a mechanical language of music, right?
Exactly.
Right. So I could write it out and then I could be like, oh, but you know what? That sounds a little bit too close to Marvin Gaye.
Yep.
And
Yep.
look at the notes on paper. Mechanically, I could show you the, you can't do that with a photo.
Yep.
You can't do that with, but now AI is able to extrapolate mathematically, by the way,
Yep.
you know, like let's look at the proportions of your face, right? Proportions of my face.
Yep.
Like people think like, oh, I taught the AI, how does it, like, how many images did you give it? It's like, no, you don't understand. It's not hitting a server, photoshopping your face. It's redrawing your face because it knows your face. You
Exactly.
understand?
Exactly.
So Holly's been a big advocate of defending artists' rights and digital ownership, and she's done this thing called spawning. And she's gotten companies like Stability AI to adopt new rules, basically say like, no, you can't teach your model on my image or on my likeness or I'm artist X,
Yeah.
right? And legal aside, because you can make a legal case that it's indefensible, right? But it's more the spirit of that, I think, is really where this Overton window, because I think the modality of the plastic arts, I think fashion, all these things are going to change radically,
Basically, yep.
right? So what gets me off and where my curiosity is like I follow all the AI influencers, you know, and I stay in the cut with all the AI developers and like I just want to know. I just want to know, you know, I need to understand it and I want to be an advocate for people to not miss the Overton window.
Yeah.
Right? These things happen in civilization and in history, and they do not give a fuck about all the boundaries and borders that we make in mental models that we make as a culture. Like we make around, you know, what is right or what is they don't like technology is a motherfucker.
Facts.
Okay. Like
Facts.
fire, once it got unleashed, I don't like you could say oh, it's dangerous, it makes weapons of war. Well, it also cooks and it heats your house.
Exactly.
So am I going to sit here and wring my hands or am I going to understand how to harness this,
Yep.
right? And for good, right? So to be generative. And I think that is a moment we're in right now that is I'm paying attention to deeply.
No, certainly. Yeah, I think, I guess depending on your environment or your conditioned thinking, you kind of see any novelty as, especially when it comes to technology, is like fear first, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to no, I can actually kind of manipulate this to greater use for it to be positive, have a positive effect on my life and the lives that the people I interact with. But yeah, I think that goes to conditioned thinking. So, but you definitely hit it on the nail. Just because it's not the now. Well, it is the now and the future. So, I think
It is, you know, and there's a lot of things that people will be like, oh, they'll roll their eyes over, and that's fair. But you know, I just when I am I excited about? I saw your questions. Like I'm excited about a lot of young designers that are out there. There's a lot of great energy out there. Um, I think the industry is slow to evolve technologically. I feel like our manufacturing base in this country is weak. Um, I feel like there is a culture of taking shortcuts, you know, and corporate shortcuts, you know. I'm taking a term from a friend who shared that with me, so I can't claim it, but you know, like all these new tools shouldn't become a shortcut, is the headline. So if it's a new Shopify feature, if it's a new, you know, direct to digital screen printing, or if it's a new, I could just buy the blanks and just do it this way. Like there's still something in making something from nothing, you know. So
exactly.
like the creators that are doing that and trying to build or nurture or cultivate some form of even a small version of their own infrastructure, I feel like are the ones to really watch, because those are the ones that it's a longer track, but could have more impact, you know, in the field, right? So that's what I'm excited by, you know.
Certainly. Now, how would you define the success of both the 93 collection? And also, how do you define success now? And has that definition changed, throughout your
Oh,
journey?
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I went through such it's people don't perceive it that way, but I went through such a tough uh road to build the brand and to sort of build my career. People perceive it as I don't want to be melodramatic, but I had some real ups and downs. And uh so I think, you come into a relationship with humility, and you think I think success is not tethered to transactions for me. I focus on effectiveness, not righteousness. Like, I focus on trying to be effective, right? And if sometimes success, where it used to be about like a top line number, right, or big stretch goal, which there's merits in operating things that way, right, to certainly to get teams to compel to a vision or a goal, right? But like on an individual basis, um I think of it as like, all right, well, what's my objective? And then I try to proportionately make my energy and the resources just work hard. And I think if part of the equation has to be like creative satisfaction.
There we go.
You have to get a sense of, there has to be a sense of joy, right? Because what the fuck otherwise, right?
Seriously.
No, I mean, really, what are we talking about?
Yep.
So, like, I think it's got to be a sense of joy. There's got to be a sense of being fiduciary responsible. So sometimes you can't splash as hard as you want,
Mhm.
and that's okay. It's not about splashing. I've done it where like I've pressed the splash button and you try to out splash, and that's very fleeting. It
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily in the end, when you actually do the
Temporary.
calculation, necessarily equal the sort of success. And I've seen those things where I've taken big swings and take enough swings and misses. You're like, chill on that swing. Swing when it's right,
Exactly. Yeah.
which is
Hit the
it's an art.
fastball. Hit the fastball down the middle.
Right. Yeah. It's an art, not a science.
There you go.
And you know what? And then also, for me, it's a very personal thing. It's like my relationship with my God, it's my relationship with my family. It's really that simple. It's old fashioned, I guess. I've become that guy.
Certainly. It's not even, I wouldn't call it old fashioned, but I mean, as as you experience more life,
Yeah.
family responsibilities, yeah.
Yeah.
You,
So
but I love the kind of the maintenance and well, really the sustainability aspect of kind of creating a realm or a world where you kind of still feel like you're 5 years old, because it's
yeah.
like sustaining that creativity. Because I always look at, like, the goal is kind of to get to that happiness. We fight so hard to go back to that 5 years old where you can just kind of create without any kind of guidelines, even though you have a
Without
purpose.
shame. Without
Yeah,
shame.
shame. There it goes. Yep.
Shame is like comparison is a shame game. You,
Yep.
you get into adulthood, and it's the human psyche and the brain starts to this is what I meant about like the like gatekeeping, and the CFDA question, and it's happened in music. I've seen it happen in technology. I've seen it happen in the education field, which I'm in.
Yeah.
People organize around ideas and ideologies, and if you don't conform, then you're constantly comparing, and comparison's a shame game.
There you go.
So how do you create without shame? How do you be the truest, most best version of yourself? And that takes a lot of courage. That has to take, people like when you hear, I always listen. Some people will say like, I don't give a fuck. And I'm like, well, actually you do. You actually give the most fucks because you actually care and you want to do something that really satisfies yourself. So don't say you don't give a fuck. You do give a fuck, right?
The opposite.
And
The opposite.
and in fact, you're giving a lot of energy. If a fuck is energy, right? So like you're giving a lot of energy. So don't try to make this self-effacing statement to sort of actually blunt or chill your passion. or right, like it just means you have to be courageous. If you say I don't give a fuck, like then I feel like you have to be courageous to just, you know,
I feel like that's a cop out.
don't, yeah, if you're getting that, you know, I think I forget who said it. I want to say it was Van Gogh, but like if you get the urge to paint, like paint, you know,
Yep.
something to that effect.
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah. I
create.
think
You're feeling that urge to create. Like that's what we were put here to do.
exactly. I agree, and because I've been having these kind of same conversations just with my peers and family, just about like passion, purpose, alignment, even like thoughts. Because like where do thoughts come from? I feel
Sure.
uh like there's a lot of divine intervention that happens between like a conception and the burning desire to kind of fulfill that conception and execution. So it's like I always look at it like that's divine. That comes from the creator. So therefore you have to do it. And so much energy is tied to it that it's like you have to do it. It's imperative. So yeah, I go the same
Great.
Mark. Yeah,
You
yeah,
have to be in touch with that.
yeah.
You got to be in touch with that, and you got to know, you know, where the source of that is coming from, and basically be humbled by it.
There you go.
Sometimes it hurts to do the work, like physically, mentally, socially,
Yeah.
financially.
Yeah. Right
So
right on with that. No,
all of the above.
Mark, I appreciate this
Yes.
conversation. It's been everything that it's been greater than what I even imagined.
Oh, for us to talk about 30 years of Echo. There you go. What do you think? It's probably be way more than you need.
No,
So
sir.
it was
No, I
fun.
appreciate it, man.